This is a simple, clear example of a greenhouse gas emissions trading system for an imaginary country, the island of Enerhope. This presentation will introduce the basic vocabulary and mechanisms of a cap and trade system with offsets. Later chapters will offer more detail on the stages of greenhouse gas emissions trading and will compare this Enerhope model with real emissions trading systems, past, present, and future. This presentation assumes that the debate is over. Enerhope is willing to reduce its emissions of greenhouse gases. The presentation also assumes that the audience is familiar with the recognized unit of measure for reporting quantities of greenhouse gas, tons or kilotons or megatons of carbon dioxide equivalent. This great cartoon by Peter Nicholson resembles several emissions trading lectures that I attended. Not too successful. Can anybody teach cap and trade without making the audience fall asleep? Hopefully, Enerhope can unravel the mysteries of emissions trading in a simple, enjoyable presentation. As you watch this video, stop the video at any point where you do not understand the lesson and review the previous 60 seconds of video. If you are looking for a hard copy of this lesson, go to the Enerhope website and download the PDF file entitled Island Cap and Trade, the Enerhope Emissions Trading System, from the How It Works webpage. Welcome to the island nation of Enerhope, which, like other nations, is concerned about the approach of climate change and willing to reduce its emissions of greenhouse gases. In 2009, Enerhope monitored all of its greenhouse gas emissions and prepared an inventory. Here is Enerhope's 2009 inventory of greenhouse gas emissions. In 2009, Enerhope emitted a total of 39.0 megatons, that's 39 million tons, of greenhouse gas equivalent. The stacked bar graph shows how many megatons were emitted by each of the major sectors. For example, transportation, agriculture, residential, and so on. The biggest sector was large direct emitters, large industrial and power generation facilities that burned large quantities of fossil fuels. However, other sectors, in particular the transportation sector, also emitted large quantities of greenhouse gases. The people of Enerhope are concerned about climate change. They tell the government of Enerhope, we must reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Here are the elected officials of Enerhope debating the greenhouse gas issue in the Senate. The government of Enerhope is determined to reduce Enerhope's annual emissions of greenhouse gases. By how much? The government of Enerhope sets a target for emission reductions by the year 2015. Here's the target. Enerhope's target for total greenhouse gas emissions in 2015 will be 5% less than its monitored 2009 total emissions. As we see from the calculation, Enerhope's greenhouse gas emissions target for the year 2015 will be 37.05 megatons of carbon dioxide equivalent. How will Enerhope reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 5% between 2009 and 2015? On the graph, we see that the target height of the stacked bar in 2015 will be 5% lower than the 2009 total. The government can plan a combination of policies and programs to achieve reductions in every sector, for example, regulations, policy decisions, information and promotion, taxes, fees, subsidies, technology development, and so on. The graph shows that the sector with the biggest emissions is large direct emitters. The government decides to introduce emissions trading to reduce the emissions of large direct emitters. Who are these large direct emitters? A petroleum refinery, a coal-fired electricity generating station, a steel mill, a cement kiln, a natural gas-fired electricity generating station. Each of these large direct emitters directly emits over 100,000 tons per year of greenhouse gases directly into the atmosphere. Here are the monitored greenhouse gas emissions for Enerhope's large direct emitters in 2009. They range from 0.6 megatons of carbon dioxide equivalent from the petroleum refinery to 7.0 megatons from the coal-fired electricity generating station. The 2009 total for all large direct emitters was 15.4 megatons of carbon dioxide equivalent. These are direct emissions emitted directly from the exhaust stacks of the large direct emitters. These totals do not include indirect emissions. For example, the steel mill reported that it emitted 5.0 megatons of direct emissions from its exhaust stacks. The steel mill did not report any indirect emissions, for example, emissions by any of its suppliers of iron ore or electrical energy. The government of Enerhope decides that total greenhouse gas emissions from Enerhope's large direct emitters in 2015 must be 10% less than in 2009. The government also decides to introduce emissions trading to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions of these large direct emitters. The government of Enerhope proclaims a regulation creating a greenhouse gas emissions trading system for Enerhope's large direct emitters. The regulation authorizes Enerhope's Minister of the Environment to specify a cap, a maximum allowable total, for 2015 greenhouse gas emissions by the group of large direct emitters together. The 2015 cap shall be 10% less than the total emissions in 2009 by the large direct emitters. The regulation also authorizes the Minister of the Environment to specify a list of the large direct emitters which are, quote, under the cap, unquote. The regulation applies to specific facilities, specific sites, not to companies. For example, an electricity generator that owns a hydroelectric dam and a coal-fired power station is not under the cap. However, the coal-fired generating station itself is under the cap. This presentation has been brought to you by www.enerhope.com. The Mysteries of Emissions Trading Unraveled. A free course in emissions trading, including a glossary of terminology, is available from the enerhope.com website.